going to call to order the City Council Transportation, Energy and Utilities Committee at 5:34. Entertain a motion on our agenda.
I would move to adopt the agenda as posted.
Second by Councilor Bain. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Next we have adoption of the minutes from our March 24th meeting. Take a motion on that.
I would move to adopt those minutes.
Sorry.
It's good. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption of the minutes, indicate by saying
Aye.
opposed. That's unanimous. Next, we have public forum. We have 3 people signed up here and we have at least 1 online. So I'll start with folks in the room and then we'll turn to folks online. If you're online and you want to speak in public forum, use the raise hand function in Zoom to indicate so. And our first speaker will be Gordon Review.
I think I'm on the official docket. I will
Okay.
find it in, so you can skip over that.
Got it. Then we'll move on to Nick Persampieri.
Thank
There it
you.
is.
Nick Persampieri, I live in Ward 3. I want to talk briefly about the thermal energy system carbon impact fee ordinance that was passed in 2023. The last section of that ordinance required the Department of Permitting Inspections to maintain records of applications submitted, related documentation, and it required them to report to the City Council no later than January 1, 2026. I'm not aware of such a report having been made. If in fact one hasn't been made, I would ask that you request one and make whatever you receive available to the public. I also wanted to point out that at some point, I think members of the public are going to ask you to revisit the ordinance. As you may recall, for some of you who may not have been here at the time, this is an ordinance that imposes a carbon pollution impact fee when someone requests a permit to install new heating equipment in a new building or a large existing residential building. They're required to pay a carbon pollution impact fee if they install a fossil fuel heating system, but not if they install a renewable heating system. And the city patterned the definitions of what's renewable based on the state heat standard. That legislation, as you may know, was never adopted by the state. So from our standpoint, this ordinance is flawed. We don't have a problem with a carbon pollution impact fee, but we believe that if you are going to have such a fee, you have to impose it on all heating systems that emit greenhouse gases, not those that are considered non-renewable based on the city's definition. The city considers heating with wood, heating with renewable gas, heating with liquid biofuels, all the renewable, so they're not subject to the fee, even though they emit greenhouse gases. The state's plan was to have a sliding scale, apply a fee based on the carbon intensity of the different fuels. This is all or nothing. If it's a fossil fuel, you pay the whole fee. If it's not a fossil fuel, you don't pay any fee at all, even if the greenhouse gases are comparable to the fossil fuel emissions. So I just wanted to advise you that we may be raising that. And finally, I just wanted to make a request related to Burlington Electric's report last night. Last night, Burlington Electric reported that greenhouse gas emissions in the ground transportation and building sectors are down 17.8% in 2025 relative to 2018. I'd really like to know how they calculated that emission reduction. I sent around an email about that yesterday to all councilors. I was hoping someone would raise it at last night's meeting. No one did. I'm very concerned that this is based on fuzzy math, that they may well be claiming that electricity, use of electricity does not result in any greenhouse gas emissions. If that's the case, this number may be inflated. So I'd really like to understand how that's been calculated. I suspect hopefully there's been some emission reduction, but I'm not sure they're not affordable.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Stu Lindsay.
Hi, hopefully it's appropriate. I'm Stu Lindsay, Ward 5, and work with a nonprofit called Walk to Shop. So everybody has probably seen the little bright green trolleys around town, and that's us. So we declared May to be Walk to Shop month, meaning that can we get people to walk as transportation, not just recreation. And we have a few initiatives that we'll have on through the month. One is Show Me Your Steps campaign. So can we get more people to walk to the coffee shop? And the coffee shops are coming on board. If somebody walks 3,000 steps, they will give them a free coffee or $1 off. So there's an incentive to get people to walk. And our goal is to log 1 million steps in the month of May. So we'll see what we can do. That's one of the things that we'd like to do. And the other would be with the opening of the parkway, it would be great to have a little gift for the pedestrians and be able to demonstrate what a scramble is. So many people may have a quizzical look as to what is the scramble, whereas that ability to be able to cross the street on diagonals. But many of the pedestrians aren't really aware of the fact that they could do that and how to do it safely. Jack, through locomotion, would like to be able to do a demonstration like a pop-up, maybe at the corner of the Parkway and Flint, where you have a lot of pedestrians using the Parkway, and see if that's possible and make a day of it on a weekend. And the other one would be a seminar dealing with the 15-minute neighborhoods. If we're going to make our communities more walkable, can we show how to use them? The New North End is a perfect example of a 15-minute neighborhood, and getting people to realize the benefits of being able to walk to their community, and how can we create more 15-minute neighborhoods in Burlington to really deserve the title of being a walkable. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We have nobody else here in the room, but I see former Councilor Sharon Butcher's got her hand raised online. Go ahead, Sharon.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to talk about the solid waste generation tax, but I want to first of all say that it was so refreshing to hear somebody talk about the walk bike committee. It's always about, sorry, Jean and everyone that bikes, but it's always about the bicycle. And I feel like the pedestrian gets lost in the conversation. So it was refreshing to hear people talk about ways to encourage people to walk and make it safer for people to walk. I think we have a real problem between the bicycle and the pedestrian on sidewalks outside of the downtown. It is just dangerous, and e-bikes make it very dangerous. So I really wish that some more attention could be paid to that. But that was an aside, and I just needed to jump on that bandwagon because I'm not a biker, but I am a walker. I sent all of you, and Chapin, forgive me, because I didn't mean to exclude you, but I sent it to the counselors on this committee regarding the solid waste generation tax item and what you're asking them to consider. And when I read it, and I read it multiple times, my takeaway continues to be that what is being stated is that, and rightly so, that residents get a lot from that tax because street sweeping, a bunch of other things, leaf pickup, you name them all, and I don't need to rename them. And I don't disagree, but then you talk about two ways in which we generate income. One is through charging the haulers who pick up waste, trash, to cover, we used to cover the cost of recycling. And you tweezed those two apart. You got the attorney's review saying that this was really not a user fee. Well, I'm not so sure I agree with the attorney's opinion. But anyways, you tweezed it out. You talked about different ways to approach recouping the money because of the change in January 2027 of recycling being done by Casella. And you talked about how to generate enough revenue to cover the costs. And my takeaway was that one of the options, this is from the text, not so much from the table, one of the options was to charge every household for this solid waste generation tax that covered trash and recycling in that, as opposed to having the those who actually use that service pay for it. And so my concern is one of affordability. I years ago decided that I needed to look at how to change what can I control, what can't I control. I could control the cost of having someone come and get curbside trash pickup. So I made the choice that I was going to do that myself. That's a big thing for me to do. It's not always easy, but I do it. And I live on East Avenue, so I go to South Burlington, but pay my fee. I didn't feel like I was shorting anybody. I felt that you were getting some of that revenue from the drop-off center. And so I would bring my compost, my trash, and my recycling there. And I don't have to do it every week. I do it maybe twice a month. And so for me, if indeed the decision is to have everybody shoulder this $12 a month, and it doesn't sound like much, but when you add it to everything else, it's all cumulative. If everyone is to pay that for a service that they really can't afford and have chosen to do it a different way, I take issue. I take issue with recycling and trash as being user fees versus a citywide fee. And so if I'm misunderstanding what the intent, forgive me, but I think it's still important to understand. Maybe there are other people like me who misunderstood what you're trying to ask for. But if you are asking for that tax to be shouldered or paid by every resident, then I'm hoping that you will have a discussion about people in my category. I'm sure I'm not alone in this. And is there any option to figure out a way to save the city, to generate revenue for the city, but not harm the resident? So I think that's it. And I hope you'll consider what I said and educate me if I misunderstood what your intent is. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I don't have any other speakers online or in the room who want to speak at public forum, so I'll go ahead and close that and open our deliberative agenda. And the first item on our deliberative agenda is a discussion with the Burlington Walk Bike Council and City Council collaboration. Right.
Great, thank you, Councilor Barlow. Philip Peterson, Senior Transportation Engineer and Planner with Public Works. Before we get into that, I do want to plug that Plan BTV 2050 has an open house this Thursday at 1 Main Street. I would encourage folks to attend that. It's from 3:30 to 8. It's not a meeting or a lecture, or it's going to be an opportunity to meet with all the folks in the plan. So be there. So in terms of this conversation, the Walk Bike Council, city staff support the Walk Bike Council's proposal. I think it's a great idea. If we're going to be going into people's neighborhoods to talk about these concrete plans that sometimes can feel a little bit vague. Plan BTV walk bike, maybe not a concrete thing for folks. And it's also an opportunity for the Walk Bike Council to engage directly with city councilors in those different boards. So I'll let the Walk Bike Council folks give the presentation. Yes.
Thanks, Howard. I think I've had a chance to meet most of you, but if I haven't, I'm Gordon Dragoon. I'm the chair of the Walk Bike Council. I'm accompanied by Jack Tiana. We have Jason Stuffle that's attending remotely, and Jack Evans is our local motion representative. The Walk Bike Council is mostly an advisory committee, in fact, entirely an advisory committee, but we're trying to better fit that role by being able to advise the city council on the walk bike issues that we see, active transportation issues, I should say. We spent some time recently with South Burlington, attending their walk bike council meetings, and there's a more concrete integration between how their committees function. How they function isn't necessarily something that can be translated one-to-one here, but it did reveal a need for us for there to be communication on these issues. South Burlington's been doing a lot of good work on these issues, and they're progressing quite a bit, and it would be good to keep up. Although that isn't to say the staff isn't doing a great job keeping up. The proposal as of right now is based around the fact that a lot of these walk bike issues, we're speaking of the 15-minute city, a lot of these issues are very specific, or at least focused on the locale that people find themselves in. The New North End, even though I support these policies, the walking, biking issues on the East End, they don't really apply to me. As those projects are not something I'm going to be running into. But I am very interested in the projects that are happening in the North End. Same thing goes for the Central and the South districts. That, in tandem with the fact that we want to see some better integration, but we don't want to have to send an email or something like that. It doesn't seem quite as integrated in tandem with what Philip is saying around residents feel that these projects are kind of sneaking up on them sometimes, even if there is a deliberative meeting much of the time. It's just another opportunity for folks to be aware of the active transit infrastructure proposals or policy changes that are going to be coming from either DPW or parks or other city staff departments. So our goal here is to think about a structure in which the Walk Bike Council, city staff, residents, and the city council could be invited to a forum once a year that is, I don't want to say limited to members of a given district, but focused on members of a district. For the North, Central, East, and South district, the district councilors and the ward councilors for those districts would be invited, and we could speak to what we can expect to see in that given district for that year or for the years to come. So that way citizens have a chance to be informed on it. We have a chance to chat with you about the issues that are going to be important to your district in the coming months and year. And then so from this structure, we're just hoping to get kind of feedback from you guys on support for the idea, maybe some iterations that we can make on it, with the hope that we can get some support from you all and then bring this to the city council for a more formal, yes, we like this, we would like to continue to value active transit in the way that we have in Burlington. I mean, it's kind of our silver bullet in terms of like how we're attracting people to the region, so continuing to focus on it where we can in a way that benefits residents can only do a lot of good.
And in parallel with that, it's an opportunity for city staff to directly engage with the public in these areas, you know, north, south, west, and east, and get input on what it is that folks like and don't like. And, you know, we have 12 meetings, a meeting every month. So 4 of those meetings would be replaced with these opportunities to go into these areas. So it wouldn't be here. It would be, if it's the New North End, probably at the Miller Center. If it's East End, maybe Schmanska Park, like to do something outside. Who knows? And just kind of take it from there.
Could you explain what you meant by replacing meetings like once a?
Sure, do you want to take?
I was gonna say the walk by council meetings, we have a monthly meeting every month already, so just replacing one of those with our meetings, so.
We meet first Wednesday of the month, open invitation.
It would be a walk by council meeting, but it would be relocated into those districts and we would directly engage with folks in those areas.
Reach out on Front Porch Forum, Facebook groups ahead of time, let them know that there's going to be a forum and a conversation with city staff about anything. Folks are welcome to come, to listen, talk, and y'all will also be able to engage with these issues that are pretty important to the city.
I think from my perspective too, the big benefit here is the way that we do planning and engagement and deliberation on those topics. We've got the walk by council where kind of resident advocates and, you know, advisory council talks to city staff. We've got meetings like this where city councilors talk to city staff. We've got meetings where city councilors talk to residents, where staff talk to, and we've got all these different ways, and there's not a place where we all come together and get on the same page. And then I think that leaves for a lot of surface area for missed connections or not everyone being on the same page. I think this is like a really, in our opinion, I think it would be a good opportunity to get everybody in the same room, to have leaders, advocates, residents, staff, all in the same room, able to talk together about these issues and not be kind of playing telephone over the course of a year. I think it also kind of gives staff the opportunity to play the role of staff and the politicians to play the role of the politicians and have everybody be able to play their own role instead of having to dip into different roles, put on different hats that they're not necessarily comfortable with or ready to wear. So I think that's the goal here, is to increase communication and hopefully reduce the amount of times we have to talk about things. That's like long term, like it'd be great if we could just streamline how we think about what we're gonna do and then just do it. But this is kind of a starting point of just, do we want to get some of these meetings on the books and see how they go? Right.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, the thing that holds up a lot of these walking and biking projects, as you know, as city councilors, we have a walking and biking plan. We have plans on what we want to do that has been approved, but then we go to do the install, to put it in the bike lane, to do the traffic calming thing that we already know we wanted to do, we're approved to do, and then it stops because residents that are in that area get upset, get angry, they don't understand, they don't feel like they were communicated enough with, they feel disenfranchised in the process. And so hopefully doing this will prevent that and won't prevent all of it. But at least we're making a good faith effort here.
If I could just jump in. At Local Motion, I've worked with about 50 different walk bike groups throughout the state. Those range from informal advocacy groups that really don't have a connection with municipal governments to places like South Burlington, where the context here is city councilors or a city councilor is assigned to that committee. And they sit on it and they report back. That obviously does not correlate with how the city council subcommittees are set up in this city. But I think from that perspective and seeing how Burlington operates, what Gordon said about how the New North End and the South End and the East End and the Central District, they all have very specific approaches and needs and concerns about active transportation. And they're not isolated, but they are these subset systems. And when we have a specific project meeting, talk about one cog in a system. And when we talk about Plan BTV, we're talking about way too big of a system for everybody to wrap their heads around. hopefully this open house is super approachable and high accessibility. But if we're able to break the city of Burlington down and places and the ways that people get around into sort of these manageable but these life-sized chunks, these neighborhoods, I think we're gonna be able to see a lot more and have a lot more different types of conversations about how people want to get around their barriers and the types of change that can actually improve their lives in that neighborhood. They don't even sit around and wait for every other member of the 3 other districts to talk about their specific needs. They can really focus on kind of this community of walking, biking, rolling, and even transit possibly for what matters in their home and where they work.
So that was our spiel.
It's your spiel. I'll open it up to committee then for feedback and questions.
No, I have.
Check, right.
This is great, thank you. Also, just a quick plug, I think it's way more fun to bike in Burlington, than South Burlington. I'm biased.
Oh, no, we got the
Sorry,
silver.
South Burlington, if you're listening, you're great, but
We're currently applying for the awards for Bicycle Friendly America. We still have silver and they have bronze, don't worry.
okay, let's keep it that way, go for gold. I think this is a great idea. I have just 3 points to make. The first is, and I'll just make them all and then I'll turn it back over. The first is I just want to pressure test this idea. This was a fair amount of work to set these up. I think it's great work. It's important work. I'm glad you're all showing up here. It seems like you're willing to do it. I just want to make sure we're set up for success there and that you feel you have the resources and to do community outreach and the sort of event planning that will be additional for what you're doing right now. So that's thing number 1. Thing number 2 is and it's very possible this exists, but I don't know about it. I really like this idea of breaking it into the districts, and I'm wondering if there already exists or in tandem with this, we could make some kind of place on the DPW website where people can find out what's like whatever you're going to talk about at the events. I think we should have that information online as well, because it would be great for a Ward 6 resident to just be able to look it up and say, here's kind of the page on the plan for our ward. And if we're already putting it together for the districts, I think it would make, for the in-person events, it would make sense to have that accessible another way. And then the last thing was just, when I started reading this memo, I thought it was going to be a different memo. I thought it was going to be more about formalizing how your work intersects with the council, which I think is a little bit of a separate topic, but I would love to do, I think I see here that you would like to talk to the council about this, which is, I think it's great, but I don't know if we could have like a standing spot for them on this meeting agenda, like twice a year or something like that. I think while you're thinking about all this structural stuff, I would love to just have that be a piece of the consideration set. I'm very supportive of that.
So for capacity, do you want us to address?
Sure.
So for capacity, the Walk Bike Council meeting is happening every month anyways. So that time period is already blocked off for staff and for the folks that are part of the Walk Bike Council. I don't see it as too much of a heavy lift for staff to set up, space in those areas. We already have meeting space in all those different districts. So it's just, and just making that arrangement. And then another, like a front porch forum post. I mean, that's, I guess, if these meetings are gonna involve food and other things, then yeah, I mean, it can get pretty extravagant there for sure. But in terms of capacity, it's not too much more of a heavy lift. I don't imagine it is, but maybe I'm over.
Sounds like a lot of work to me.
Oh,
If you guys are.
I would expect that it's probably going to have a bit of growing pains, like you spoke to. We're pretty informal right now. Like I'm not exactly an event planner. I'm a software engineer, so it's almost the opposite of an event planner. But like, I'd like to think we work with a lot of good people. I'd like to think that we'll be able to get some good information as part of like some of these first few, and then have it be a great like recurring thing that we know kind of what we're doing. But I'm sure there'll be some growing pains.
I mean, in terms of a meeting like this and taking on some new initiative, I often ask myself, am I being busy or am I being effective? And I think something like this has a lot of upside. And it's kind of a win for everybody, city council, for residents and for city staff, for the Walk Bike Council, so. Not much of a downside into putting in the effort. The online information, that's great. As far as formalizing, that is something that the Walk Bike Council, we've discussed quite a bit. And we kind of decided, you know what, let's start baby steps.
Start here, right? Like that's kind of where
Yeah.
we started, it's like, what do we do? And I think as we thought about it more and thought about what the practical first step would be, it was. Why go through all of that work if really what we just want to do is have more communication between all those groups, like I said, and we can just do that without like. You know, writing things into the charter, or like developing a new, what do you just. It's not worth it to start there, I feel like, maybe we get there, maybe we find that that's valuable.
These things take on a life of their own too. Because this will go to city council and you all will discuss it. Decide if it takes on a different track.
Definitely was on our agenda. This is just first steps to getting that relationship with the councilors and.
Other councilors, Eric.
Not much for this. I think just like, yeah, with making sure that it's like successful out of the gate, just utilizing the pre-existing communications infrastructure that we have in neighborhoods. The biggest ones that come to mind are the MPAs, of course. Even if it's just utilizing their email lists, the steering committees, asking them to send stuff out about these. Or even if people have the capacity, just going to them, doing both ideally. And yeah, and looking into other sorts of pre-existing neighborhood communication networks you've already touched on like Facebook. Yeah, I support this. Sweet.
So I think this is a really good step for you to get into the neighborhood. Right, and that to me, you're hosting it. We are, you know, I'm okay about going. As long as it doesn't conflict with a meeting like this or, you know, like a gazillion other ones. So obviously scheduling is important. But having us there, I think you should think about the other, in a way, mandatory players that have to be there. Merrick just mentioned the NPA as, you know, somebody who I think that sort of ignore them at our collective peril, because, you know, they see themselves, I think rightfully so, as spokespeople for the grassroots neighborhoods, and they're all organized in this way. So, you know, we should, there are lots of gaps. So,
Sure.
This is a start, so, you know, I don't mean, and I wouldn't flood you with any ideas. I would say that the likelihood of there being dramatic is probably too much, but even really, no, I know dramatic, that would be, I think that's an impossibility to be effective with one meeting, right? I you know, not in terms of all the details of the work that will be revealed. What you are doing is opening a box which is potentially Pandora's. And as a result, you're gonna, if it's successful, it will just, you know, cause lots of other stuff to happen. So I think you are potentially underestimating, but that's okay, because this is what we sort of want to have happen. But the other thing to just think about, and I'm not suggesting that you are doing more than once a month, or, you know, doing 4 of them a year, but life in transportation is very different seasonally. People's focus is different seasonally. We're riding our bikes more.
It's not riding your bike in January.
I don't ride my bike even. I do walk. Sharon, I walk all the time in my neighborhood, which is a very walkable 15-minute neighborhood, but and I throw that out just to put it in the hopper, not to tell you you need to do anything, because I think that the idea is to start, and I'm supportive of that, as the bottom line that I know that you want to hear.
I can address two of those things. One, totally understand riding less and walking less in the winter. Our goal with this would be to schedule it spring, summer, fall, with the hopes that folks are able to get them using active transit methods. It's part of the allure of having it hosted at a particular level, but totally understand mid-January, a lot of the time these walking and biking and active transportation in general goes down. On the topic of some drama, entirely expected, we did a demonstration project last year where we put up some cones on North Ave. Jack Evans, I had a bike thrown at us at that NPA, so we're used to it at this point.
We could say passion.
Yes,
Passion.
Yeah.
Passion.
passion.
We have to be brave. Well, if we're gonna get things done. And do it. So I would say in terms of like it being an appetizer for folks in the neighborhood, Walk Bike Council meets every month. So the hope is we'll plant some seeds with folks and they'll go, oh, you guys meet every month. Cool. I'll be at your next meeting for sure.
There is a lot of fodder out there over.
So thank you again for coming, and I also am very supportive of this. This is one of these areas where over communication is better. So regardless if there are other fora where this is getting discussed, other meetings, the more the better, especially for projects like the one you talked about with the cones on Levin Avenue last year and some other things that have come up in the New North End. People are unaware, even though there may have been multiple places where they could have found out about it. Some of those people aren't tuned into those places. So the more opportunities, the better. And so for that reason, I'm supportive. I was curious, how many people are members of the Walk Lake Council right now?
We have 4 members and we have a representative from local motion.
And then Philip from City.
Philip is our staff.
Yeah, and are you Chapin also? Because I saw you.
I have not, I've been attending. But it varies from month to month,
That's like the steering committee.
Yeah, sorry, that's a steering.
That's the steering committee. Are there other people who,
Yes. Oh, we have people that come through pretty
like
consistently.
roughly
it's 20,
20?
depending on the month. Some months, you know, when we had the mayor come, we had probably, this room was filled, yeah, it was a huge crowd. So, and
Those people, well, I'm just thinking about it as resources to help advocate and plan during the planning for these things. Other question I had about like funding. How are you just like for meeting rooms, the city's like taking care of that right now?
yeah, I mean, we have lots of space, you know, in the Old North End, we can utilize park space and they don't charge us for that. South End, we can use the front conference room, that doesn't cost anything. The Miller Center, that doesn't cost us anything. So it's utilizing meeting spaces within those different districts that we already have access
So
to.
the expense for materials and thing, that's also borne. I mean,
Yeah,
so it's like DPW would.
yeah, I mean, it depends.
I'm just wondering if there's funding that needs to be appropriated or applied for any of the.
For something like this, I mean, not really, you know, other than my time, which is honestly not that much. I mean, it does take up some of my time during the month. I would estimate I probably put in like 10 hours a month on Burlington Walk Bike Council stuff. So if we did this probably would add another hour or two. But beyond that, you know, materially, these meetings are, you know, Zoom and it's like this.
And I guess the other thing that I would say, and I think this is really important, and I think it does get lost sometimes, is that these hopefully will be conversations and they'll be two-way, not one way, where we're just saying, this is what the Walk Bike plan is, this is what's been approved, this is what we're doing, because that doesn't sit well with residents sometimes. And I do think these plans need to evolve over time and need to be revised over time in cases where, you know, there's pushback in neighborhoods and it's legitimate, if it's legitimate pushback and not just, NIMBY, resistance to change. Sometimes I think there are valid reasons and they may have not been considered, when plans were initially drafted and documented. So, I'm hopeful that these will actually be conversations and maybe there'll be new input from community residents that get, more fully incorporated into some of the existing plans.
Communication is a two-way street.
Yeah. But I think it's an awesome idea and I appreciate you all coming and, talking.
Two-way
with us.
street or a two-way?
Yes. Yeah, that's good.
Well, thanks so much for your time. Is this something that we?
Well, I think we were looking for some kind of formal sponsorship to bring to the city council. So we presented to all the city council and.
Yeah, vote.
Well, I suppose we would. Well, but are you looking just to get on the agenda of the city council?
I mean, but you don't need a,
Not necessarily.
you don't need an action from the city council to do this, right? I mean,
I think that they just want to come and
Yeah.
present to the city council. I think we can get you on the agenda.
That'd be great, and I think you're correct, we don't formally need anything to try to put this together, but to just get counselors, I mean. You all have said that you support it, and we appreciate that, but if we don't get support from the full gamut.
Yeah.
We can be more sure that we'll have
Yeah.
like some good attendance, some folks can know that it's ahead.
I mean, I would make a motion to refer this to the city council. On the agenda.
sure, I'd second that.
A motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on this? And do you understand the motion as presented for the minutes?
I think that it would be helpful for you all to be clear about your goal from the council itself. Because that will inform the action that is posted on the agenda and that frames people, so. I mean, like, I don't see the council as needing to have to take any action per se, so it's, you know,
We have information.
yeah, we have information sessions,
Work sessions,
But,
information sessions.
you know, yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, but we would,
I have a question. Motion, we're not putting a date on the council meeting, so whose job is it going to be to, between the president, us, and the walk by council is going to decide.
well, it would be based on I think we have a number of things that we consider urgent that we're gonna be taking up in the next 2 or 3 meetings. There's probably room. I'm not aware of all things before the council. I don't think any of us are, so we would put it into the hopper at the earliest possible place we could.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it doesn't get lost.
I don't think it would. Most things,
Usually the chair does that.
that's right. We would give it to the council president. Ask him to agendize it as quickly as he can.
Sweet.
So it may be that the motion should include having a new memo from the walk by council. Sure. That would accompany it. And so, you know, the motion is to refer this to the council for the council's information. It would have a memo. It's fundamentally the same, but maybe with some insights from this conversation.
And some extra details on what the goals are.
Yeah,
Clearly identified,
Yeah.
specific.
Sure, that makes sense to me.
And you could mention in your memo that it has the full support too.
yeah.
Sweet. Well, I think that's all we had for you.
Yeah, we do.
We can vote still too. Okay, so we have a motion that's been amended and Rob, have you captured that? You want to read it back to us?
Burlington Council, the walk by council and city council collaboration framework for council's information. Does that capture?
Well, yes, with the memo from the walk by council, I'm explaining.
So that's part of the motion.
Let's make it clear so that we can look back and say, oh, this will be it.
Is there any further discussion? Motion, so. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, by saying aye. Opposed, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
I understand. Okay, so we're. I'm good. You were. So please be your home. No, you're. Or then we might really know and follow up. You're gonna be another one.
So we'll see you guys out.
We're gonna keep this moving. Thanks, guys.
We'll see. Lots of things.
Next on our agenda is the Vermont 127. SUP Connection Study. What is it? Shared use path, thank you. I read the memo, but I was stumped by the. So. That's fine. I'm excited about it as well, so.
Are you ready?
Please.
Hi folks, Brian Davis, I'm a senior transportation planner with Jenny. For putting this on the agenda. Tonight we're going to talk about the 127 shared use path. Have a short presentation, a couple dozen slides or so, we'll get through in 15 minutes, and then as you see in our memo, we have information that we like. Without further ado. I would like to introduce the project team. We have representation from all the parties here in the room. We've got Public Works, Manager for Public Works here. We've got Madison, consultant PHP. We've got Max, I think was online for Parks. And then myself, you can see the full team here. And then we are supported by an advisory group. We benefited from their expertise, their interest, and their passion. We had representation from additional city staff, members of a couple of the commissions, other interested parties, a couple of the boards, New North End, and Jack from Locomotion / Walkway Council. Again, this was a request from the city, with support from the RPC to look at a new active transportation connection from the existing 127 path to North Avenue. There's just really a couple of options to get on the path, and the city felt like this would increase connectivity between those two things. We also wanted to look at the safety of the path itself, given its proximity to 127, and also look at the path physically. Are there opportunities to make it safer, wider, more safe and comfortable for users? Digging a little deeper into the specific needs based on that purpose. Again, looking for more direct connection, neighborhoods off of North Avenue and North Street, and further up north with the path itself. Again, making the path safer, more accessible, and comfortable as a facility, and improving safety given its proximity to 127. As we do with all of our projects, we want to hear from people. So in addition to our advisory committee, we held a couple of public meetings. The first one was in the Old North End. And the second one, that was our local concerns meeting, front end of a project. We want to hear from people. What are your interests? What are your challenges? Where are the opportunities? What can we do better? What would you like to see from this facility? Then on the back end, we go through our process. And then we come back to the public for an alternatives presentation. We held this one in the New North End in conjunction with the planned BTV New North End project. So throughout this whole thing, we were talking to each other, making sure these plans weren't going to conflict with any final outcomes. And then in between those public meetings, we had our advisory committee meetings. You can see on the boards, the dot voting, so on. In addition to the online survey that was open for a number of weeks, so people could participate when it was most convenient.
Do you have a total number of people that participated?
I believe we had more than 150 on the survey itself, in addition to the public.
And the meetings, how many people?
I'd say we got feedback from a couple of them at the second public meeting, open house. Maybe that's the first public meeting.
Couple dozen and then a dozen at the first at the Old North End.
Yeah, thank you. Combining is always better. You don't have to ask people to come out in the evening twice, let's do it once. From all of that engagement, you know, we heard some of the common themes, a desire for better access to the path of its neighborhoods, some of the safety concerns that we've heard from people, the maintenance, lighting, safety. Is there opportunity to maximize that separation? So those would come themes that we heard from all of that engagement. And then I won't go too deep into these different memos that are in the appendix of the final report, but they go into more detail about sort of the in the field inventory of the existing conditions, assessment of some of the potential improvements that the city could make over time. And then a review of the crashes to understand what's really happening between the path and 127. 50 something crashes, 56 crashes over that 5-year period. About I knew all the numbers before I came in here, but there were no fatalities, no injuries, just about that of the crashes reached the path. Most crashes are single vehicles, but there are a couple severe. So there wasn't any predictability to what kind of crashes is happening out there. Mostly on the curbs, but it was good to look at. Talking about the alternatives, the first alternative, in addition to this one, is the no build. I'll show you a matrix in the slides. The no build alternative. This is alternative 1, which is reallocating the existing bridge space. So not necessarily building anything new on the bridge, using and reallocating that space. I can sort of walk through from east to west.
I'm sorry, when you're talking about the bridge, you're talking about the bridge over the highway to Ethan Allen Parkway?
Correct, the current vehicle bridge, yes. So we've got this is the Homestead Road. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but to clarify, I think the bridge that goes basically for the exit that goes over the 127 highway, right? That's the bridge we're talking about.
Oh, so there is a,
Yeah, the church is in the North Ave. This is the beaches interchange.
So I know where it is, I'm just trying to.
well, yeah, I mean, I run this like a lot. So there are actually 2 bridges that go across, right? So that's why I wanted to, one's up in Ethan Allen and far up, the other is in this the Ethan Allen Homestead, you know, intersection, right, where you've got that. And so
Alternative 1, this is the first bridge as you're going north.
and so
if you wanted to go to the home, if you're headed north on 127 from over then and you wanted to go to the Homestead, this is the exit you would take.
yeah.
Or if you wanted to go to North Beach, or the church, which is at that intersection with North Avenue. So this is the existing vehicle bridge.
I'm just,
Homestead Access Road is, that's where there's a little parking lot that.
no, I know, I'm trying to orient myself to.
That's where that's like my.
What about it's on this end?
There is North Avenue.
Navigations.
Where is Ethan Allen Homestead?
It's under the.
It's it would be underneath the workspace.
Okay, so that's Ethan.
Yeah, this is the access road that goes to the
I'm
Homestead.
just trying to get a sense of where.
The sea cave?
North, north is on the top, north
Yes.
is on the side, okay, that's north. It's got. I'm backwards because I'm always going south because I go south. So, okay.
Yeah, the sea caves, you can see a little bit of the water down here.
Yes, if you're headed south, you're gonna come in from the left.
Yeah, no, I.
And then go down.
Yeah, there it is.
And I'm sorry, but where is the bridge that we're talking about right here is, can you point at the map?
Yep, it's the
Right
vehicle
there.
bridge right here.
Yeah, goes over.
Okay, so we're talking about making it up. Walk bike friendly.
Right, because there is no good way to get from there to there.
No, it's a limited access highway.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so this, in alternative 1,
Right.
it would create, it would reallocate the existing space on this bridge. It would reduce the median, so right now there's 16-foot lanes and a giant median right now, so this would
That's where you're
change
at.
the median, shrink the lanes to 11 feet.
Slow down cars.
It might, yep, and you can see in the inset over here on the left, what this would look like on the bridge, and this path right here would be 14 feet. So with the 10-foot shared use path, you want to have 2 feet of what's called shy space on either side, because if there is a barrier, people aren't going to be right next to the barrier. They're going to be a little bit away from it. And then as you come off the bridge towards North Avenue, then the paved portion becomes the 10-foot. And you'd be separated from the roadway with a green strip. The current slip lane off of the southbound exit, the traffic analysis showed that you don't actually need that. It wouldn't have impacts to traffic there. By converting it to just a T intersection, it makes it safer, people walking and biking. Reduces the number of conflict points, makes everyone pay attention to each other. The traffic analysis also showed that the 2 lanes aren't needed as you come towards North Avenue. There's 2 lanes now because that slip lane comes off and just feeds into that right-hand lane as it is. So if you don't have that, you don't necessarily need these 2 lanes. The traffic analysis showed that the volumes weren't such that you needed those turn lanes here. It's shown at the intersection now just to be a new striped crossing to provide access to the bike lane on the other side. That intersection would be a separate study for the city. Again, we were talking to the Plan BTB New North End. Wanted to make sure we weren't coming up with different ideas that didn't complement the things that they were looking at too. So that's alternative 1. Any questions about that?
There's a signalized crosswalk on the south side of that intersection. We move that to the north side.
The new crosswalk on the north would be in addition to the crosswalk on the south. Okay. Alternative 2, similar but different. This is creating a new bridge adjacent to the existing bridge that we just looked at. So there would be fill required in this area on both sides of 127. There would be fill required as a part of building a new bridge next to the bridge, and then the other pieces are essentially the same. The median is a little bit different in this design, but again, looking at removing the slip lane, teeing up the intersection. This alternative shows the 2-lane approach, still the right turn and left turn. But again, the traffic analysis showed you didn't necessarily need that. So the new bridge is the main difference with this alternative. Alternative 3 is looking at the other existing bridge, or the bridge to nowhere. There, early in the process, we looked at that. There was interest from both the public and the advisory committee to dig a little bit deeper because something already exists. So is there an opportunity to use that? So the team did look into that. The bridge itself isn't up to current standards. It needs a lot of work. It's currently 8 feet, which is sort of like the bare minimum. Also just structurally, it needs work. Also significantly, there's ledge along this portion, so that would need blasting and a retaining wall. Fill would be needed into this wetland to support the path. That would just go adjacent to the off-ramp and then come in. It's also 2.5 times longer than using the existing bridge over 127. But we did want to take another look at that because that bridge is there. Put all that into our evaluation matrix to make sure that they to evaluate, do they meet the purpose and need? What sorts of environmental, natural, cultural impacts are they having? A planner's cost estimate of what we could expect those different alternatives to be. And I will point out at the bottom something that the consultant team has been doing more of is this embodied carbon analysis. And I can't speak a lot to that, but it's something that the consultant team suggested we do just to understand sort of life cycle, what's that carbon impact of those alternatives. So the preferred alternative is alternative 1, using the existing vehicle bridge. Unanimous support from our advisory committee, garnered the greatest public support through our outreach. all the good stuff there on the slide. We took another deeper look to see what other improvements we could make to that particular alternative. Shown here. The original alternative had a 5-foot green buffer between the path and the roadway. We decided to extend that to 10 feet just to make it safer, more comfortable. Could add some pedestrian scale lighting to that. Currently, there are the highway scale, which is fine for highway, but it doesn't really speak to people who are walking and rolling along there. The intersections themselves, you tighten the radius to make sure that people in passenger vehicles would drive more slowly. We could have mountable aprons so that the larger vehicles could still make those tighter turns. And those are the highlights for alternative 1. And we have a fancy graphic. Well, that's the next one actually. As I mentioned, the traffic analysis, don't need all of the lanes that are currently there. Conceptual cost estimates for alternative 1, the preferred alternative, is a little over $5 million. That's all in. And here's all the graphics, and this is in your packet. I know it's hard to see on the screen. But again, as I talked about, tightening up the curb radii with mountable aprons, the 14-foot shared use path on the existing bridge, narrowing the current vehicle travel lanes to 11 feet, narrowing the median, removing the slip lane, creating the T intersection, 10-foot green belt between the highway and the roadway and the path. These yellow are the current street level lighting that don't indicate pedestrian scale lighting. And then the single lane approach to the intersection with the new crosswalk. And here's sort of what that lane section would be. Great. Okay. Open for discussion, comments, questions, feedback.
I mean, it is a pain to get from the Homestead to North Avenue unless you go all the way down to Ethan Allen Parkway, so. It makes sense, I've done it many times, but most states running on the, you know, on the road where you're not supposed to run, not supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say. I mean, the money is something, you know, I mean, obviously $5 million, but we don't have. It's hard.
But you're ready. You're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I noticed you said, good to see you, Brian, your former neighbors. You mentioned that your research found that most people are not using this as a commuter path. I think it's really exciting to envision with these changes that might change, that might shift in a great way.
Yep.
Because this makes it so much more easy and pleasant to get from the new North End to the old North End, essentially. So I think that it's just cool and exciting. I am curious to hear more about what happens next, right? So we have this, I agree that option number 1 is the best. I just don't know a lot about this process. Who do you hand it off to? Do you go raise money, or how do we build it?
Yeah. I have a couple of responses to that. So both the safety memo and the widening memo includes some shorter term options that the city could consider at lower cost. So those are improvements that could be made in the near term. The city has also requested for our next year's work program at the Regional Planning Commission, looking at 127 corridor for some safety improvements. So we're going to take another look at that from the roadway side of things. I think that will present some other options in that regard. I like to offer our staff support for finding funds to do this. It's great to do the plans. It's even better to see them come to fruition. So when those larger, so I will say the VTrans Bike Ped Grant program was just announced. 5 million is a little above what they will fund, but they are starting to award some larger grants. But again, the demand for that is pretty high. The federal grants, that's where the bigger dollars are. A little bit harder to get, a little more requirements, but I see that as still an option for projects like this. We just have to be mindful of the request that's being made and timing and so on, but
What else is on?
correct, that's right, yep.
And as part of this report, PHB did put together a brief list of funding opportunities. So now we have this report ready to go, and when we go apply for those grants, basically you are required to have a scoping study that shows the need. And with something like this, where there was such clear public support, that's a very good sign.
What would be the estimated? Yeah. Got money in hand and then like,
That's nice.
yeah, what does that look like?
Like how long would the construction actually take?
Yeah.
That's moving, I would say, it's like it's just reallocating space on the existing bridge, so it would be. Assuming that the bridge test didn't need work or anything major, just be adding surface level. I don't know that much about bridges, so I could be wrong, but I don't anticipate it would be more than one construction season.
And stoppages for folks going on in both directions, north and south on 127 that would getting out that would want to be getting off. If you go to North Avenue, what does that look like?
As a part of, if there were funds to do this,
Yeah.
and it went to the, if somebody
Yeah,
was attracted to do this, they would
we-
come up with a traffic control plan. To figure out those
Okay.
specifics, we don't have that today,
Okay,
but that would be a part of that next phase.
based on your past experience with all sorts of construction projects, what's a guesstimate?
Well, I mean, for example, the Winooski Bridge, which is a much more complicated project, they're keeping one lane of traffic open on that. I would not imagine that, I mean, this bridge is very wide for the amount of traffic that it takes. I would imagine they would be able to maybe do it in phases where they're flipping traffic one way or the other or flagging people. I don't think it would be a major disruption for it.
There.
I have no notes on the third alternative. I would approve this alternative. I think the questions that you just got are with like timeline and impact, obviously, bring it to the city council. You can get predictions for that stuff. That would be ideal for the 11th. That's in here, right? You're going to the council on the 11th.
That is the hope.
Yeah, so you could, have those for, I would expect that councilors would ask about those, so. But yeah, no, that's great.
But this is my neighborhood and I've traveled all these ways hundreds of times in the last 20-something years, so. I understand that the challenges, especially, there's a lot of people who informally, it sounds like we have a counselor even who does this.
Rogue.
You gotta go from here to there, like, how do you do it if you
But the
don't do that,
bikers,
right?
well, you go through the park, where you go all the way to the bottom.
That is the way.
You go all the way to the bottom of Ethan Allen Parkway, but it's definitely a detour, and some people don't take the detour, some people don't know, and they create all sorts of safety hazards for themselves and for the drivers. So I welcome this improvement. This would create connectivity that isn't there now, and I think it would be used quite a bit. So I am supportive of alternative one, and in terms of closures, luckily, there's alternatives to get around. You can just, close it at the south end and tell people to use North Avenue, which used to be the way you got north anyways, way back when. And it isn't ideal, but it's not like a huge inconvenience. So I'm sure we could manage that. We close it for the marathon, we close it for accidents.
Yeah.
We close it for other reasons, so. But yeah, I'm very supportive and hope this works. That one slip lane, that's being removed, I don't know that it gets a ton of use. I'd be interested to know more about that, but it seems like anybody going south doesn't come down 127, they get off on Plattsburgh Avenue anyways, by and large.
I think the traffic analysis is in one of the appendices for this.
Okay.
So those numbers are in there if you wanna.
Yeah, I will look, I
Yeah.
didn't read the memo, but I did read that.
Yeah. There's a
I
lot.
can go to VHS.
Go to, yeah,
If you
go to
want to
VHS.
go to
Yeah, yeah,
VHS,
yeah.
you get up
Yeah,
to the south.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true,
Yeah, that's, you gotta go back.
but it's still coming to the intersection rather than having the slip line, slip you without. Okay, so, any other comments before we close this item? Move on.
No, so you're looking for us to make a move, to move, to refer this to the council, yes.
I believe there is a recommended motion in the memo.
Right.
I just have one more question before we get to that. Your comment on VHS, I think it would be really interesting to do some analysis, maybe you already have, about how this might impact our new high school, because I think it could be a path that students potentially use. And it's just a nice timing with the school opening, and students or teachers are, so just, if you've thought about that, I would love to hear it. If not, maybe for future kind of feedback, that would be a good audience.
Right. I agree, and I would look to Madison, I don't know if the traffic analysis, if there was forecasting about when the high school gets back to the new high school, if it captured that, but I agree, you know, thinking about the survey responses we heard and who's currently using it, I think speaks volumes to who's currently not using it in this connection, which is invite more people to use that.
It's okay with you, Chair. That's your question. I'm just wondering about the wayfinding for both the residents and as well as people that come from away, being able to follow a problem.
Yeah.
So it's so important.
Right, I agree. There wasn't a wayfinding package included here, but I think it's something that the city continues to look at citywide, super important. Having the beaches like up there.
Okay. Yeah. So we do have a motion at the bottom of the memo. If someone would like to offer that.
Well, I think that's
So
the
that's for the
motion
city,
for the
that's
council.
for, you're absolutely right.
So I just would move that this be referred back to the council for action, for the action indicated in this memo. With our recommendation, I think I'm okay with recommending it. With this two recommending.
We have a draft. I'm sorry, I read this a little confusing. I put the draft motion that you will see at city council,
Right,
so the
right.
request from you,
That's right.
how I wrote it is to recommend that the city council. That this item go to the city council for that proposed action.
That's what I read.
Okay.
Second,
Did you capture that, Ron?
You repeat that?
We're recommending that this go back to the city council with a recommendation for approval. Right, that's what I,
From the two.
from the two.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the project team and the public for participating.
Yeah, thank you so much.
thank you all. Good work there.
Okay, moving ahead. Onto our agenda. We are going now to talk about the solid waste generation policy. Guidance in this discussion.
And solo. How's everybody doing?
I already tell you I'm confused.
Okay, well, hopefully I can make it clear for you what we're trying to accomplish with this. So as we said, we're talking about the solid waste generation tax and policy options. And I know in previous conversations about recycling, we've mentioned flow control. So the Department of Public Works is looking to the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee's recommendation on two policy decisions related to who should pay for the city's recycling and solid waste activities. The first would be, should the city implement flow control
for residential recycling collection via odor service. The second would be, should all residents pay for base solid waste services through the solid waste generation tax? City solid waste generation tax is detailed in ordinance 1414. And as you may know, previous recycling conversations, it's a monthly tax assessed to local licensed area haulers that pick up trash from residential properties throughout the city. And the purpose of this tax is to support the city's solid waste management efforts. It historically been predominantly used to fund the city's recycling program, which includes employee salaries, benefits, vehicle purchases, other associated costs, and recently, as of March 9th, with council approval, contracting out the city recycling to Casella will also be funded through the solid waste generation tax. On February 6th of 2024, City Council updated ordinance to clarify that the solid waste generation tax could be used for a range of solid waste activities such as soil management through the purchase of 201 Flint Avenue, landfill maintenance, fall leaf collection, street sweeping, and encampment cleanup and disposal costs. Currently, there are 5 licensed haulers in the city of Burlington that provide trash collection service to city residents. In FY25, the licensed haulers collected from around 11,700 RDUs in the city. As of February of FY26, that number is now down to approximately 11,100 RDUs. That are receiving recycling collection services that are provided by the city.
So, just repeat those numbers so that I can understand, and I'm really looking to see who, the number of residential units that are getting serviced by the haulers that are not paying, if there is a distinction between.
Yep, I'll get to that a little further down in the memo, because all the numbers that I am reading now, so the 11,700 residential dwelling units in FY25, which is a number, it's a per month number that they collect from, is what we base solid waste generation tax on to create the revenue to cover recycling budget expenses. In FY26, as of February, that number has dropped to 11,100. 11,100, correct. That's due to some of the larger properties such as Northgate, who had, I don't know how many hundreds of toters out there, wanted to switch to Casella because they could require a better service, because the way our ordinance read is we would collect everything at the curbside. It has to be in the cards. They have a hard time educating the residents out there to put it in the card, so there'll be a lot left outside the cards that we would not collect because it's not inside the card. So Zella was willing to take the extra time to go through and do that. So that property and some other larger properties slowly been seeking private services for the recycling. The current solid waste generation tax fee is set at $12 per residential unit per month. And haulers' past and current practice of collecting the tax has been to apply it to the taxes to the residents that only receive city recycling services. So if a resident does not receive recycling services, they are not charged the solid waste generation tax. And then several months ago, Assistant City Attorney and DPW staff reviewed City Ordinance 1414-2 taxes imposed, which states the tax shall be imposed upon solid waste haulers, collectors at the rate per month per residential dwelling unit served in Burlington, set forth in the city's budget or is established by resolution of the City Council. Amounts of tax charged are not refundable. So upon review, Assistant City Attorney provided guidance to DPW that the ordinance could be read that all residential dwelling units serviced by the city licensed haulers for solid waste collection in the city would be required to pay solid waste generation tax. regardless of if they receive city recycling or not. Because the taxes haulers, collectors, and not the residents, based on the number of RDUs served at that property. And this is relevant that the charge is a tax rather than a fee for service. As a fee is generally paid by someone receiving a service, whereas the tax is more universal, and as it points out in the memo, the state education tax, that's an example. The plain language in the ordinance always supported this interpretation, but particularly where the tax no longer pays for recycling service exclusively. So it would be incorporating other services that we've mentioned. So it is arguably fair to charge a tax on all residential units served. And interpreting the ordinance in this manner would increase the amount of RDUs by 7,713.
I'm sorry, you said that, how much
7,713
additional units?
Currently, there are approximately 18,400 residential units in the city. The additional number that I mentioned, that 713, would be less because of residents at South Hall. But they still would be contributing to the solid waste generation tax, which is solid waste district. And they are one of the licensed collectors, not a hauler.
So they would be collected at the point of disposal at CSWD drop off. And does it matter if it's the Burlington one, or do you have, and it's the South Burlington one, they don't collect any information in terms of where people are from?
We are still negotiating the updated way of charging with CSWD. They're looking at a couple of models of either whether they ask or whether we do a comparison between the RDUs that are served by haulers versus the total RDUs in the city, and whether they just pay us a flat fee. We're still working that out. The end result is we want something that gets us closer to an all-in approach.
Yeah, fair enough. As a self hauler.
Yeah.
Still fair.
Okay, so as indicated previously, there are a number of program functions that the solid waste generation tax and their financial impact. So you can see on the chart listed below, it's about 1.7 million in recycling fees to cover the cost of the program. The cost to operate the program with 6 months of city operation and 6 months of the contracted operation is 1,424,000. Then Glen Avenue debt service payment of 176,000. Other supporting DPW solid waste activities of 100,000, which adds up to 1.7 million. Based on FY27 draft recycling solid waste budget, as we summarized above, there are approximately $276,000 of waste activities that residents are receiving. Approximately 1,424,000 of recycling services. And there are other services that we could provide that could generate revenue, and they're listed in the chart below. So aside from recycling 201 oil management facility, we have roadside trash, downtown trash and recycling collection, where my crews go downtown every morning, circulate through the hub, collect all the trash and recycling out of the receptacles. Beyond what Parks does in City Hall Park and their facilities. We have street sweeping, which includes fall and spring clean sweep, as well as general maintenance sweeping throughout the summer. Fall leaf collection and landfill maintenance. And we're seeking two guidance on who should pay the solid waste generation tax. That's towards a 1.7 million recycling and solid waste budget. The first is flow control. Does the city institute flow control for residential recycling and require every property that receives recycling services by toter does not include dumpster service? Because we cannot service dumpsters, we don't have the vehicles to do that. You know, and it is Outlined in section 48(6) of the charter, it gives the city power to implement this, although it would require changes to the solid waste ordinance. Second would be tiers. Should the city spread the cost of solid waste services benefiting every resident to all RDUs who receive trash service, whether or not they receive recycling collection? This would include, all the other services that we mentioned, like street sweeping, the quality cleanup, landfill maintenance. We've outlined 3 options for this, the proposal. First option is A, it would be to keep it the current structure. It would be the billing only the residents receiving recycling services at the 11,100 residential dwelling units per month at the current cost of $12 per month, which would give us a total of $1,598,400, would have us at a deficit in our budget of $101,600. The second option would be to keep the current structure, but to include flow control, which would be the residents receiving recycling, but adding those total services that we mentioned above. Approximately 11,800 residential dwelling units at the current cost would be our $1.7 million to cover the expenses in the budget. And the third option would be to implement a 2-tiered solid waste generation tax system with flow control. So it'd be 2 tiers, the first tier being a base fee and all residents receiving trash service. And this would cover those extra expenses that I spoke of in the other chart.
The $260,000.
Correct.
So that would be part of the base.
The base, yep, they're just receiving trash service, no recycling service.
I think the clarification is you look at that $1.7 million budget, we only have $100,000 of other DPW expenses that fit in that $1.7 million budget. So we wouldn't fully be paying for all the solid waste programs that DPW operates under this option, but we'd be funding $100,000 of that $260,000 of overall work that Lee's group does for managing solid waste. So it's a partial support. If you all wanted to grow the fund and have it raise more than 1.7, we could more fully fund Lee's team's solid waste work. Currently, we have the general fund property tax covering the balance of that work.
I'll open it up to, are you done with the presentation?
Yeah.
Are you over?
I have the second tier, which is only residents receiving recycling service. And that with the flow control, so that number would be increased to 11,800 at $10 per residential. Whereas the base tier would be $1.45 per residential.
So by everybody paying, we could actually lower the fee that most folks are paying now, which is $12 a month. If under this option 3, people are paying both the base fee and the enhanced fee, most folks would be paying $11.45 a month. So we would be able to knock down the tax by having everybody paying something. Open to your feedback.
I wanna be clear, I'm not advocating for this as our path out, but I see another option D perhaps that is not on here, and I'm curious about, I mean, I think I know why, but I'm curious about why. Because what I'm hearing is that this ordinance maybe could have all along been applying to anyone using a trash hauler, regardless of their recycling status. So I guess my question is, why are we not just charging everyone what we are currently only charging? Why don't we charge everyone $12? Because it seems like we could have been, maybe was the original intention. And just given this, again, I'm not advocating for that. I get that's real money that people have to pay and there's a trade-off and they're not getting recycling. But just from the plain language of the ordinance, it seems like that's an option that hasn't been explored, and just with the budget situation that we have, I think it's worth just kind of poking holes in that a little bit, because if there's an opportunity to raise good money here. Or like you, or I mean, I could see another path in between tier 1 and tier 2 where maybe we kind of make that a sliding scale, like maybe it's a little bit closer together, like maybe it could be $8 versus $4, you know, I don't wanna, I think this is an opportunity to raise a little revenue, and I'm just wanna pressure test that a little bit and see if we can do that in a way that is somewhere in between what you have proposed here and just charging everybody $12 a month, because that would be, I think, probably too onerous. So just curious about your thoughts there.
Right, there certainly, what we tried to bring forward was something that was net neutral, that tried to meet the administration's goal of affordability. A number of the large units that are dumpster served are nonprofit partners. CHT or Cathedral Square, $12 per unit per month for a large property for, they haven't planned for this amount, is a huge cost shift change for them. The thought for us this year is to get them paying into the base level of service for all the non-recycling pickup related activities. And that's where we came up with the $1.45 a month, which I think with adequate notice is something that the larger developments, who have 100, 200, 300 units could reasonably handle with 6-month notice. My sense is we'd be looking at starting something January 1, so that people had enough time to plan financially for something that we haven't communicated before. But we wanted to get your general direction, and maybe we'll need more meetings before we have that general direction, so that we can then go communicate broadly with the public about a proposal and get feedback from.
I guess just to sort of frame up how I'm thinking about this more philosophically, because I agree completely. Anything we roll out needs to be done in a way that is, can't just surprise people with crazy fees. But I do think what we've uncovered here is the original intent of this ordinance was more that it wasn't like you're paying per household for a service. It's more like a shared pot for the whole city. And I really think that's how we should be looking at utilities overall. Because whether or not you get one specific service, you're still having an impact in other ways on all of the services just by being a resident of the city. And so if there's a way, I would also be interested in, I think there's so many directions you could take this, and I think it would be very equitable to have a sliding income scale, so that people who either, or a sliding volume scale, people who generate more trash pay more. So I guess I like the idea that we're sort of treating, this change would treat the whole city as one pool. I think that makes a lot of sense, so I think that's all I have for now.
So I think that the ordinance stems from the charter. The charter gives us broad authority to tax, to be able to deal with the solid waste problems. And that's an old provision that comes from the time when we ran all of our own garbage. So that's why we had dumps all over the joint, right? So the ordinance probably, it was hard to say whether it was intended to be, it was written to be implemented like it has been done or not, because just knowing the players that were there and the writing of it, but I don't think it makes any difference, because you've got the authority to do sort of the right thing, so we should try to think about doing the right thing. This memo is confusing to me, because what I really need in a very simple way is the number of people who are paying the tax, right? The number of people who are not paying it, and sort of like why they're not paying it. And if it's broken down, if there are some people like myself who is a self-hauler, I mean, I maybe I'm not paying it right now, except if I bring it to the, the dump in the drop-off center in Burlington, right?
Correct.
But, and maybe that's embedded in the quote unquote tipping fee for my garbage, because I don't pay separate for that. So, really just sort of breaking those populations down, not embedding it so much here, like in this, so you gotta like hunt for that information.
Sure.
And then from that, saying, and I'm not asking you to change your thoughts, although I think that raises, possibly a fourth way of looking at it, but just how the different plans would relate to those different populations. Are we collecting from people? What are we collecting from people that we're not? And where is it? Like, for example, the difference between the big nonprofits like Cathedral Square, who are not paying it because they've got the dumpster service, versus Sharon and me, who are self-hauling, right? So those are different populations, and again, getting the numbers, seeing how then your proposals match on that. I think that's really important. I too was thinking about the different affordability components. We are implementing those in the water division. The ED has got certain ones. Utilities are basic services, and we want to make sure that we are caring about income sensitivity. So I sort of need that. I appreciate the desire to not go too far in the first change. I do think it would be helpful to lay those options out, though. That's what sort of Becca is pointing to, and I think she's right to say, let's put that on the table. Whether we take it off the table is a whole other thing, but at least we get to understand what the impact is, so that, when if somebody floats it, we can understand more, and we can also then say, yes, it's considered, it's legal. It doesn't make political sense, it doesn't make social sense, whatever you want to use it for that. But I do think that laying them out there would be helpful. And my gut is that we also just want to have sort of a sense, and this goes to what Sharon was saying about what the change is for those who are going to be paying that are not currently paying, what this means for them. And part of it does relate to now the change in the recycling program, right? How do those numbers start to sugar off with regard to what Casella is charging? And if somebody, I mean, that whole question about, it was like, is Myers collecting recycling under the current system from those contracted units? And how does that all sort of work? What are there going to be changes in those economics that people are getting charged, so that we can get a sense of it? So I'm inclined to have everybody pay, including myself, right? I think that is the fair thing to do. And this is a tax. It is not a user fee sharing. It is a tax based on the social need that we have to manage solid waste, which human beings create, and we've got to collectively deal with it. So that being said, that's where the affordability stuff comes in. So area out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this should be treated as a tax. I think it should apply to everyone in the city, especially with the expanded scope of what its funding can go to. It's just one of those, as we talked about throughout this recycling process, it is one of those public goods that that whether or not you yourself are putting your recycling in a toter and getting it hauled, the results of that existing service and the results of DPW's work in all these other areas, we all receive the benefit of it as a city, and therefore we all should be paying into it. So and I think that given the potential medium and long-term discussions in the future of continuing to ramp up the expansion of these services, that this should be net positive, just to get us we need to start as soon as possible to start working our way towards whatever that solution may be in a couple years. But yeah, and I agree with what's been said about affordability. If we are going to treat this as an all-encompassing tax, that there should be considerations for that. And I'd also be interested to see, because I don't know what the correct dollar amount is at the moment. What would it look like if we did take it further? Specifically, I guess if we do go with option C, what would it look like raising that base fee more, or a hypothetical option D where everybody is paying the same and it's just higher. But yeah, no, that's what. Yeah, thank you.
So I had a question about how, or if everybody, all 18,400 residents were paying this $1.45 a month, it'd be an assessment on their property tax bill.
Their tax on their trash bill.
But what if they're not?
If they're self-hauling, then they're paying when they drop off at the drop-off center.
Okay.
And we are negotiating with CSWD currently. They're asking people at the Burlington drop-off where they're from, but not the other drop-off centers. They're considering a blunter kind of approach of just looking at the RDUs that aren't being serviced by trash haulers and making some sort of annual payment.
So I'm confused then as well, because like I think people who self-haul do it for affordability reasons. We had consolidated collection discussions back in 2022. There was 15% of all households in that general area were self-haul. Shared this before, but in my household, I think we pay between compost service and trash. It's $100 a month. You know, for the Cadillac composting service that we indulge ourselves in, and the trash. So even for us, a household of two now, I'm seriously considering when I'm down here at 645 Pine, like once a week, it seems I should just coordinate my own trash at the drop off, and I could send myself probably half of that. There's a lot of people who are going to think about that, you know. Doesn't mean that I shouldn't be paying I have a toter, so I like the idea. I think if by flow control you mean anybody with a city issued blue toter is going to pay X per month somehow, right? To have that toter.
It's more. Well, it's not just the blue toters, it's the people who are getting it in the dumpsters.
Okay, well, the residential units, but people's,
flow control deals with the issue that there are some folks who have toter recycling collection who are getting that service through private haulers currently.
Got it.
Because the haulers will go to their back door, which we won't do. The haulers will accept some things outside the bins, which we don't do. So there are haulers, you know, if you're talking wanting to consolidate and limit truck traffic, we now have a quasi consolidated system. So the flow control would address private haulers who were doing toter pickup. The question of who pays the tax is that broader issue of whether people who aren't getting any recycling service at all should also be paying into the solid waste needs of the city.
So those collective, so I believe those collective sort of costs that are outside of the specific trash hauling and recycling services that are provided by haulers or by the city, whoever's providing those are services, and you should pay for those services. But these other things that are sort of outside of those two activities, I think could be shared. I mean, my view would be things be shared. Now look at those things. Are those things the city should be doing or not doing? You could ask that question, but the fact is we are doing all of them now. And some of them are, maintenance, landfill and that stuff we have to do. So I don't wanna, everybody, we say it's only this much more a month, and it's only this much more a year. We've said that on PED rates, we've said that on the projected doubling of our water bills, and now this as well. It's the incremental drip of escalating fees that are really hard for people to bear. So people that make that choice to self-haul, I think we need to pay for pay for it at the transfer at the drop-off centers, as part of the collection they get at their homes. But I would not want to spread that collection cost onto people that aren't getting it, they're taking their own. So I don't know how to square that.
I mean, but they're generating it and
They're generating
they're
it,
generating and they're
to the
taking it,
Dropbox.
so the payment is at there because as a society, as a community.
Yes,
Right.
they would pay there.
Yeah,
But it's still cheap, it's still gonna be less expensive than them paying for someone to come and pick it up, truck at their house.
Yeah.
They may do that in recycling. And I'll also tell you that, like, since we've been composting, the volume of my trash has gone to almost like a quarter, if that.
Should be self-haul.
I should be self-haul.
You should.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I'm not ready to decide anything on this. And I also think once we do decide, we're just 4 of, I think, 12 very opinionated people on this topic, so we should get this discussion to the broader council before we make any policy. That's all I mean, even before I don't even know if we're equipped as to make a recommendation, and I would defer to the committee on that, but I would like to have this discussion with Jocelyn and with this, but I'll let others make other points now. Go ahead.
Just building off of a few things that were said. So just to sort of underline what Mark is saying, I unless I missed it, I did read through the memo a few times, but I don't think we've really outlined that plan for what happens if I'm not getting monthly garbage bill and I live in Burlington, just more broadly.
You're paying through CSWD.
Assuming I'm dropping my trash off there.
Correct.
Maybe there are some people who are not doing, I don't know, there could be.
Buried in their backyard. We should be sending Bill to take care of that.
I'm just saying, I wanna make sure we have kind of all the scenarios covered, and the biggest one that I heard here was dropping off at CSWD. So let's make sure there's a mechanism for fee collection, or at least some exploration.
Yeah.
And the second one is sort of a two-pronged point. In my research about this, I've seen, basically, I'm very interested in reducing the amount of trash that we all produce as human beings, and especially in the city. So composting is a big piece of that. So is there anywhere that could fit into this discussion or fee? I mean, I think we should think about it at least. So I'm not asking for to spool up a whole new program, but I would love to know where, from your perspective, it fits into this puzzle. Because that's a huge lever to reduce your trash. And then the second piece overall is, is there a way that we can use this tax for all things, trash, recycling and compost, to incentivize people to produce less trash? Because that is the most successful in other cities that have successfully reduced the per capita trash. They essentially have some system that makes you pay more. And you pay less if you generate less. So I just think it's important to ask. I don't want to task you with too much. Because I know that's not necessarily the scope, but I don't want to go through this whole process and not even think about that opportunity. I think it's an important opportunity to think about.
Yes, we also look forward to that discussion. That's in our minds what the council approved in the resolution, to have a full consolidated collection analysis started at the beginning of FY 28, which is 14 months from now. That is going to be really powerful. We agree with the power that we have with recycling now. It was set up to make recycling easy. People have to pay it in their trash bill, and then they can put as much recycling out and it just goes away. That is a great
You
incentive.
should see my house in December.
We could do the same thing with compost, but we need to have that discussion about consolidation.
Okay,
And
so
how
that's
it's
gonna be, you anticipate that will be as part of that
Absolutely.
report. That's great. Okay.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, because as of right now, we know how many people are hauling trash in the city. We don't have a good sense of how many people are collecting compost.
Yeah. Do have a law that you have to.
Right.
Well, and it's illegal to throw it in the trash. Now, whether they are, that's another question, but
you know, in the backyard.
you can do it in the backyard like I do, or you can do it, or you can bring it
The
to.
bougie service.
If you want to know about the bougie service, come see me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are all saying the same thing in terms of trying to really understand who's paying, who could or should be paying, who's not paying. Where do they fit within that?
Right. As I see this, and I'm happy to hear if you see this differently, there's a short-term problem of just figuring out who is paying for the existing system that we have. We've had a system for decades, far before I started here, where only those who were getting recycling service were being charged the tax. By our read of the city attorney, that is a narrow view of the existing language. We want your help in deciding what do we do for these next intervening years while we have the full conversation on consolidated collection. I see those as two different pieces. This one narrow piece about, are we billing 11,100 or the 18,000 households that exist in the city? That's the question of how do we continue what we're doing currently while we study the larger issue.
I would say we have to expand the pool in some way.
I mean, I think that they're one and the same. I don't think that they're not, and that is that there's another discussion they have going forward. You've got a program, you have to decide how you're going to fund it. And you've got an authority and tremendous needs in this area. And we've got to figure out how we can afford it. So if that is the question in front of us, is who is paying, who is not, and why are they not paying, and whether they should and how much, and whether there are ways that we can deal if we're expanding the pool with
For existing
flexibility.
services, right? You're not talking about us getting into
Into the
garbage
compost-
business
into-
or composting.
No,
until we have the
am,
larger
no,
discussion.
I am not.
Okay.
I am not,
Great.
and I don't think, I mean, I think that to the extent to which we are starting to look at numbers, and Becca's point, I think is spot on in terms of the incentives or the disincentives, depending on how you want to look at it, for the generation of recycling, the generation of trash.
Yes.
All that stuff, that's important to be thinking about, whether it's full-fledged, you know, on those other areas, I think is, I mean, I think is the consolidated.
And that's the consolidated collection discussion. Go to pay as you throw, which gets to precisely that. That is not what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to fund the recycling program and Camden cleanup, not trash disposal. That said, we're totally happy to have that conversation, part of the planning effort that started soon.
I mean, to the extent to which the work that we do on recycling gives you a sense of what will happen with the other ones, then it's important for us to be thinking about.
So tonight, I mean, it sounds like you're trying to, like, what you were proposing earlier was this $1.45 amount. Where do we get that from and get that into?
It was an initial proposal to keep funding the $1.7 million program that we've been having,
which we're
having everybody participate, not just the people who have recycling service. What we've heard tonight is a request for more information and more scenarios. Happy to do that for next month. We can bring it back and have that conversation. And then I think once there's kind of general direction from you all, we can discuss whether we get the public input on it first and then go to council, or whether we go to council with what you recommend. And once there's kind of initial sign off, then we have public input.
If you get a new memo together ahead of the two meeting, and if we all pledge to read it and send you some very specific questions, I think we can eliminate some of the confusion. I know that I had. So.
Okay, understood. It's complex, and we probably framed it in a way that could be cleaned up. So we're happy to do another whack at this as we try to, sustain financially our existing program.
Yeah. Sometimes we just, personally, I just have to sometimes hear this more than once to digest it and wrap my head around it. I just maybe like.
We're happy to take that.
Or some of the
Not your
jargon
fault.
sometimes isn't clear. And I know it's like, it's language you speak every day, and it's just.
I don't think you have to now mix the legal and the background with just the numbers and the proposals. I
Show
think
the
that's-
options.
Show the number, put the numbers out there. That carry on regardless of the options, and then do the options and explain the impacts of them.
Happy to do so.
So we're not, no action tonight. We're gonna revisit it next month. And thank you. For tonight. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Which brings us to our last item, the Cherry Street condemnation. Sounds so ominous. Laura's gonna.
3.0. Robin, you could promote me, that would be awesome. All right, change of topic, right? So Corey and I are here. Julia Orsaki was not able to join us tonight, but she is also one of the DPW team members who are working on the Great Streets, Cherry Street, Bank Street Reconnection project. We are here as this project has a few different federal funding sources, one of which is a congressionally directed spending allocation that has a tight timeline. This conversation echoes what we've had with you guys with the Winooski Bridge, that our federal funding deadline is end of September of this year, and to be able to back into that date, we really need to have our right-of-way process cleared and our property rights cleared by the end of June of this year. So we're here to give you a bit of a project update, let you know where we are with our negotiations of our different property owners, answer any questions about the project that you might have, and ultimately, to improve upon our process from before, seek your recommendation to go forth to the full city council so that we may discuss the start of the condemnation process, which is what we do commit to with our grant agreements that we sign with V-Trans. So with that, I'm going to jump into some of the nitty-gritties. Sharing my browser screen that has the right-of-way plans. These are uploaded on the agenda page with a brief memo. So we are starting at Battery Street here, and then just Cherry Street right here. So in general, most of the property rights that we are looking to acquire from the parcels along Cherry Street are just to reconstruct our sidewalk. So the property boundary line on Cherry Street for the city's right of way is immediately on the backside of the sidewalk. And therefore, our ability to reconstruct our own sidewalk basically requires us to have property rights from the adjacent parcels. This in a lot of cases is just a grass or a driveway impact. What we are asking for under this project is 4 feet. That's extremely generous. Most of the time, our crews and our sidewalk contractor will do this within about 2 feet, sometimes 1. And we have to have these rights from these different property owners because of the federal funding status. So in and amongst the city, there is a lot of just neighborly handshakes amongst our own crews and amongst our sidewalk contractors' crews that they are just willing to allow this work to happen under kind of a general understanding. This is the city's maintenance of the city's asset. We put everything back better than how we found it. We talk to the property owners. We offer people if they want some sort of temporary construction easement, but nobody has ever signed it. Even under Main Street, nobody wanted to sign a temporary construction agreement. This is just flat out required because of our federal funding. We don't have another way around it, because we don't own it in our own ordinance or in our own charter, which may be something we want to look to change. To have as a blanket easement for reconstructing assets that are on property line. So the first parcel is the St. Paul's Cathedral. We have 12 parcels total along Cherry Street that we've identified that we need these types of rights for. At this point in time, as of today, we have 2 that have returned, signed, and accepted. And have another one that we anticipate that will come in on Monday. There are a large questions. Yep.
Are they all commercial? Or any of them like residential homes?
No, they are all technically considered commercial properties.
And the yellow
Yeah.
are the temporary
Yes.
easements, so what
No,
you're
like-
seeing here is,
Really zoom in.
yeah,
Really zooming in. Again, this is entirely related to being able to reconstruct our sidewalk. So we're talking about, I mean, this is halfway through the sign that's on the corner of the St. Paul's Cathedral. It will barely be noticeable. Everybody that we've met with is very agreeable and understanding to the requests that we're asking. This one is actually just a little bit deeper because it's such a steep slope. This one here at the Cathedral Square is the more common 4-foot that we're looking to go in. Again, grass areas, driveway areas, they're all very tiny. People are very agreeable to this, but a lot of them, because they are commercial properties, answer to a larger organization. St. Paul's Cathedral, super agreeable. They have a board that then needs to review and approve it, and it's just been a lengthy process and a process that we don't know that they will be able to complete through their own efforts in the length of time we have for this. The smaller, more owner-owned commercial properties are the ones that really have signed already, because they are not held by such kind of larger entities and process, and I fully respect them. If, you know, again, doing this, if this was our own property, we would struggle to meet the timeline as well. So moving up the street, actually, I shouldn't say that. There is one that is a rental. That's why you were sharing.
Pine Street. right?
Corner
Corner
of Pine and Cherry Street. Yes, this one right here, which has a curious retaining wall right on the edge of the right of way. We have worked really well with the property owner of this to negotiate what we need and have a agreeable offer in front of them, reconstructing their retaining, making sure that it meets our zoning codes, which is probably one of the toughest parts. There are 2 state of Vermont parcels within this mix, one here at the courthouse and then one also at 108 Cherry Street, which is the Zamperi office building. It is really not ideal to have to condemn state property because it is already deemed a public use and we are asking for it for a public use. So again, negotiations are going fairly well, but being the state of Vermont, it's also not super fast.
luckily, a lot of these other ones, either the house has become finally set back a little bit further, or they are hardscaped foundation, which we are able to reconstruct our sidewalk immediately against and don't need an easement. We do come up to 20 Pine Street, which is unfortunately split halfway across the page, but they have the start of their property here. You're asking for a lot of grass and walkway space just to be able to reconstruct the sidewalk. And then I want to go to the other half of their parcel, which continues here through the walkway, through where the old bell tower was. And then this one kind of bluish purple dot. So they have an existing easement with GMT between the parish and GMT for some space related to the transit center. This is outside of our agreement that we have with GMT for use of St. Paul Street. There is an existing catch basin that is here. We are looking to replace it and add a permanent easement with the city because it is our catch basin for ownership and maintenance of that structure. This is the only parcel on the entire street that has a permanent easement request included with it. Again, 20 Pine Street has indicated to us, the church through their realtor, that they are agreeable to saying yes to the easement, but there are other challenges that they have with the city that they are still in discussions with and may choose to not amicably sign the easement as a result of this. It is additionally challenged that the things that they are uncomfortable with is through our zoning office and through that kind of judicial appeal process, which goes from DRB to the environmental court versus if it was a city council item related to the condemnation, it goes to Superior Court and they don't connect very quickly. So it is 2 items. Our Office of City Attorney is revising. We are treating them as two separate items. But it is one of our barriers with signing with that property. And we come across the 108 Cherry, that is mislabeled. 108 Cherry Street, which is the Zamperia office building, and move up finally to 29 Pine Street, which is like 29 Church Street, thank you.
Yeah.
Which is the building that has CVS in it, and then it has offices on the back side. This is the first spot on the southern side of the street where we actually have a few driveways at the L Bean building. Which the parcel is owned by John Sinex. We also expect, just because of the size of the corporation, that we may not meet our timeline on that one. After gear exchange, again, very simple driveway easement, and then there is one more on eastern side of Church Street, and this one is actually one that has already signed. Very tiny amount of sidewalk, actually just barely in front of the building, and then reconstruction of the driveway. So the 2 that have signed are this one for Quinn, and then the Cathedral Square. It's already provided a signature, and outdoor gear exchange is anticipated next week. So very minor easements that we are seeking, but we are on a bit of a compressed timeline for the project. And we are here looking to be able to go to the city council on May 11th to ask to start the condemnation process, where we'll be looking to set the date for a site visit and then the necessity and compensation hearings.
And all but one are for temporary construction easements.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Everybody is being offered a monetary amount, even for the temporary compensation, even for the temporary easements.
In this condemnation process would be similar to the one that you outlined for us for the Rescue River Bridge condemnations.
Yep, we are following the same highway roadway condemnation process, so we will ask the city council to set a date and time for the hearings, which is what's required publicly. We then start our outreach and certified mail delivery to all property owners, attorneys, and lien holders that are identified for these different parcels. Everybody has been provided notice that we are additionally following along on this process, as we continue to have our discussions. The city staff is acting as the negotiator for this project versus V-Trans. They are supporting us with the documentation that is required, but we are the negotiators ourselves.
And the hearing is both necessity and compensation.
We will ask to open both at the same time.
Can they be, can you?
They can be the same night.
Yeah, or they can be, like, can you separate necessity from compensation?
They will be two different hearings
Yeah.
started the same night.
So when
One
would be
can extend as needed.
so the compensation, which may be more complicated, would, seems to me to be more complicated, would could extend.
Correct.
Yes, and you don't have to find necessity to be able to start your compensation hearing. So you're able to be provided the information for necessity, leave that hearing open. Continue it, sorry, not leave it open, continue it properly, and then move on to the next item on the agenda, which will be the compensation hearing, opening that hearing and then continuing it as however.
And these are individual hearings for individual properties.
Nope,
Is that correct? No,
it's just by project. So because Cherry Street is considered one project, we only have to have hearing one of each type.
Okay.
Versus the Winooski Bridge has two.
But each project, within one hearing, each parcel gets heard.
Yes.
Actually heard twice, gets heard for
Yeah.
necessity, gets heard for compensation.
Yep.
Very good. So, and you're looking for us to refer this back to the council?
We would like your support to be able to have this be as a council item. There is a motion that was included in the memo.
Yeah.
And after you act, I would like to ask a question about the date, and if you would like this to be as a special hearing or heard within the council meeting.
I don't see the motion.
It's
Very
very
good.
first
Oh,
of
there it
the
is.
memo.
Got it.
I'd like to make a search for it.
Thank you. Lead with the need, right?
Well, if we're ready,
There's no more discussion on it?
I don't know.
I don't have any either. Support.
I heard Rebecca say she's ready to go, so let's move to approve, I move to approve the requested motion. And to send this back to the council for the May 11th city council meeting. Second.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you. In working, this also has to be a mayor presiding meeting. The mayor has said that if we are working with our recommendation, and our timeline for notification, that if we were to hold this as a separate meeting instead of at a city council meeting, the identified 3 evenings that she could be available are June 22nd, 23rd, or 24th. And if we were to hear this during a city council meeting, the June 29th meeting would be the one feasible. And we do have to do a site visit at some point in time for it. And then.
So this is separate from the council approving it on the May 11th meeting.
Correct, yes, this will inform. When we reach out to with Council President. For a date.
My preference would be to try to do it existing council. It's just easier to do that than schedule.
Well, I think we have to do the site visit.
You at least have to do the site visit.
Right there, in the same corner. It's easier than this.
Yes.
And it can be the same day.
Again,
Right, yeah.
there's the conflict with the Board of Finance having occurred, so we could try to do the site visit before the Board of Finance allow that meeting to happen, which then rolls pretty quickly into a city council meeting usually.
How many people are required at the same?
It is not mandatory. So
No quorum.
no quorum is needed, it's just an opportunity, it is required that we provide. The judiciary body the ability to do the same. And that it is a warned date and time, so that the property owners are also able to attend.
And I think we would have this discussion at the May 11th meeting, but it's good to know where we all are at.
29th, that is city council meeting, so it's not gonna. Right.
Assuming we're done with our budget.
Yeah.
That does sound good, but not done with your budget by that night, so
It's aren't always.
it's not my favorite choice.
That is true.
And unfortunately, we do have to decide it at the May 11th, so we have to issue it. So,
So,
we will work with Council President Travers, I'm sure you will see the question again.
okay, very good.
So did we vote?
Did we vote? I think we didn't vote.
I moved it. I don't know. if it was-
Seconded. All in favor?
The motion and we had, I don't know, I thought we voted.
I thought. well,
We
It was more out.
We did?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were unanimous.
There we go.
My brain has stopped
If
working.
we didn't vote, and we should vote.
But we did vote, so.
Yeah.
All right,
Berman made the
Somebody say
motion.
attention.
Second.
all right. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our deliberative agenda. Director's report is next.
Great, given the hour up, just keep this short. We are fully underway with construction season. Pleased to report that this team to my right has been successfully advancing the completion of the Champlain Parkway and Great Streets Main Street. We are internally discussing some opening events for each of these the projects, which we're excited about. We'll have more information soon. We're working with the contractors and schedule to pick appropriate days, but expect something in the south end for the Champlain Parkway and something downtown for Great Streets Main Street. And we're underway with the paving program for calendar year 25 and happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Continuing last year's calendar 25 work.
Seeing no questions. I'm just excited about Champlain Parkway, the other part thing. That's gonna be real time saver.
There's a lot of interest as this date gets closer, and we're hoping that the community event that we're hoping to do separate from a ribbon cutting is a good community celebration.
And then, so that concludes your director's report. Councilor Items, any councilors have items that discuss? See, none, I guess. Councilor Bergman doesn't get to chime in. Our next meeting, when we scheduled this meeting, Becca, you weren't here and we assumed this would be. Oh, you did for this? Okay. So is this,
I remember talking about it because I said,
is this a
the
good,
begrudgingly said yes.
is this a good time for everybody still or? what?
My caveat is that I like to check if there's a council meeting night for,
Okay,
and if we have the chance to choose a time when there's not a council.
so
meeting, it makes it
is
way
there
easier,
council meeting the night before?
which is,
It's Memorial Day the night before, so the 26th, which would be the first work day after Memorial Day, looks open.
And it's
so it's the 26th, not the
Tuesday.
19th.
Yeah, which
It's
is
the
our
fourth
regular
Tuesday.
meeting schedule. Rob, what are you seeing for the conference room?
Oh, we're good for having it here.
Okay. So it sounds like, can you meet on the fourth Tuesday? Or 30, it's the 26th, I think we said.
Yes.
26th, my birthday, sure, why not?
So cupcakes.
We met on my birthday this year too, so.
There you go.
Do we have any?
I'm looking forward.
I realized I
Mine's the
have
15th.
my daughter's birthday and my husband's birthday are exactly 2 weeks apart from each other. And they're the 15th and the 29th, and there are city council meetings on both of them. My daughter and the. Be mad at me.
Okay, so let's tentatively, I guess, let's schedule ourselves for 5:30 on the 26th.
Right.
And with no further business, and absent objection, I'll adjourn this subsequently.
Right.